Welcome to the Journey to Wellness podcast, sponsored by the Essential Wellness Society and Healing Wheel Holistic. I'm Melissa Stonehill-Kyam, and I will be your host. With over 40 years' experience in the health and fitness industry, I am ready to dive in to some of the most conflicting topics we have regards to health today. Let's go. Welcome to the Journey to Wellness podcast. My name is Melissa Stonehill-Kyam, and I will be your host. Today, I am sitting and having a beautiful coffee and this lovely muffin at the Treehouse with Connie Greisz. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
And often, I am able to memorize somebody's bio in the intro. I cannot remember this bio because it's too long. So excuse me while I read it to you so you learn a little bit about who I'm sitting with. Connie is a personal power enthusiast, is passionate about supporting people to embody their full potential and to create the lives they truly deserve. She's a holistic empowerment coach, master meditation coach, breathwork coach, certified sound healer, Gene Keys guide, somatic processing and somatic harmonizing practitioner, and she started her journey to wellness as a chiropractic assistant. So with all that, I'm going to give Connie the opportunity to introduce herself in more detail and tell us, how did you get here?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like every step along the way that you don't think is connected puts you right where you're supposed to be, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how everything has happened for me. So what's really ironic is that when I was in college, as you know, I started college when I was 17, my goal was to become, I hate to say it, but a pharmaceutical sales rep.
Well, that's actually a very lucrative job.
Exactly.
So I would not hate to say it. I mean,
right.
You had to do what you had to do.
Yeah, so that was what was driving me then. And it's just funny because now I'm in a much more holistic space. Mm-hmm. But I kind of got to where I am now because of everything I've been through. So I've always been a weird medical mystery. I've had a lot of different traumatic events, and those traumatic events are kind of what triggered my opening, my healing. And it wasn't until I found a really good chiropractor that helped me that I finally felt like, oh man, I'm actually kind of like becoming who I'm supposed to be. Like I feel embodied, I feel full. I had been through therapy, I had done all these things, and I had kind of gotten over my PTSD diagnosis by that point. But there was something missing still. And just a little bit of background, I was born with really bad scoliosis and kyphosis. They wanted to do surgery on me. Thank God my parents never let them do that. I was terrified of chiropractors, but I've had back issues my whole life. And then I found this chiropractor who changed my whole life. So I ended up working for him, running the whole wellness center. And it was when I found that connection between like a connection to our body as well as our emotions and our mental state, that if you don't have all of those things connected, mind, body, spirit, all of it, and a lot of stuff coming from the nervous system really being the foundation, if you're not working on that nervous system, it doesn't matter how much therapy you go through, you're still going to struggle, you're still going to feel kind of stifled, and you're not going to blossom into who you can be. And so when I found that, I was like, man, I want to share this, I want to help people. And I thought maybe I'd become a therapist, but I didn't want to get stuck under Western medicine. Mm-hmm. So then I became a life coach, and everything else just kind of falls into place after that. Like it's just.
Well, just to roll it back a little bit,
yeah.
One of the things that I really love that you said in your own discovery is the connection with the nervous system, your overall health, your mental health, mm-hmm. your structural health. As a holistic nutritionist, I have always found it really great to work alongside chiropractors and more kind of alternative medicine practitioners because they understand that what you put into your body, not just consuming food, mm-hmm. but what your thoughts are, your thought consumption, also, can trip you up. I mean, are you familiar with Sarno's work, Dr. Sarno, and healing back pain?
I'm not, actually.
Yeah, so it was very interesting because just the real side thing. Dr. Sarno was the head of pain management at NYU, and he's no longer alive, but they tried to disprove his theories, and he was actually coaching people out of back pain without even putting hands on.
Wow.
How our body could be so overloaded with thoughts and trauma and stress and stress disorders that the body in its intuitive gifts will say, here, have some back pain so you can forget about your relationship with XYZ that's driving you crazy, or the boss you don't like, or whatever you're dealing with. Let me help you, right? So I like that you full circled that. When you mentioned that this led you to life coaching, can you expound on the why that led you to life coaching?
Yeah, so the why it led me to life coaching is because I originally was going to become a chiropractor. My bachelor's degree is in communication, so I've always kind of had a natural knack talking with people. But then I, had this life-changing experience with chiropractic, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm going to be a chiropractor. Did all the things, got pre-med basically, got accepted into like the best school. And then the universe was like, nope, that's not the right path. So not going too deep into that, it wasn't the right thing for me.
So there was an incident or something that gave you a little derailment from that?
I couldn't pay for it, and then I didn't get approved for the loans, even though they were government student loans, federal student loans. I still didn't get approved for them, which thank God, because I don't want to be 6 figures in debt now. But anyways, I was like, well, how can I still help people and incorporate this matter of helping people through mental, emotional processing, but incorporating the body. And so that was when I started learning about just like somatic awareness and breath work and somatic processing. And life coaching is kind of the umbrella that all that stuff can kind of fit under. Because if I was going to become a therapist, then I would be stuck under Western medicine ideals, and I would only be allowed to do certain things. As a coach, there's no regulating, governing board telling me what I'm allowed to do and not to do. And as long as I have permission from someone and carry the right kind of insurance to protect myself, then I'm able to put my hands on people's bodies, I'm able to coach them through breath work, and I'm able to do all that with that umbrella of life coaching. So that's
the other thing I really love about life coaching, I took that journey as well, because when you work with people and you work with traumas, there's boxes to check. And one of the things we never want to do is practice outside of our scope of practice. So anything, when you're dealing with humans, has an emotional part. Weight loss, weight gain, not getting the job you want, all that kind of stuff. So what I loved most about life coaching, where I see it really is different as well, is as life coaches, we're allowing people to solve their own problem. So the word, when you in your empowerment coaching, it's a very good title, because whereas modern psychology, I'm not putting it down, there's phenomenal therapists out there, it's just a totally different technique. It's comparing, acupuncture to modern medicine. It's just very different technique. And where a psychologist may give ideas or suggestions, a life coach is going to say something like, so what would your life look like if you weren't afraid of flying, or something like that, right? And then allowing the person to keep coming up with more and more reasons why to get unstuck.
That's
so
exactly it.
I just love that. I mean, I really have so much respect. So I am going to just look at some notes real quick. So this is a super good question. Who is your perfect client, if there is such a thing?
Oh, that's a great question. A perfect client for me is someone who is actually like ready and willing to put the work in to reach the goal that they want. And someone who knows that there's nobody out there besides themselves that can fix them. And fixing is another word that I don't like to fixate on, because we don't need to be fixed. We're all perfect just how we are.
Yeah, I do like that. I do like that, to say that.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
It's someone ultimately who is going to take responsibility, really, is what I think is a perfect client for me. And I have had to learn the lesson, especially as I've gotten, more and more into coaching people and expanded and worked with different types of people. There are people I have to say no to, and that was really hard for me at first, but I do have to say no to those people who are looking for a quick, easy fix.
Can you tell the audience that's listening, what are the signs of readiness?
The signs of readiness, I would say, there's like I want to use the word dissatisfaction, but I don't want to have a negative connotation with it. But this kind of like feeling within yourself, like, man, I know that there's something more for me. I'm stuck feeling like I'm doing the same thing every day.
Okay.
So that's why dissatisfaction kind of comes in for me, because that's like the first thing that says, hey, like something needs to change. I want to change my life. And also the signs of readiness are probably going to be with like being ready for change. Okay. Accepting and being open to change. So sometimes that's like your back's against the wall and you have to change, right? And
that's for sure. You're put in positions where you have no other choice.
Yeah. And that can be like a healing crisis, a health crisis. Maybe you lost your job that you've had for 10, 15 years and you're like, man, I don't know who I am anymore. And so those big transitions in life are usually where I end up helping a lot of people. And sometimes the thing that seems to be the worst thing that can happen to us is usually the biggest gift. But I think the readiness is definitely just that desire for something more, or the desire and willingness to change.
And you meet people that have the desire and think they have the willingness, but then some of that willingness they put on their own road stops.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I've had people who, for instance, want to do a cleanse. Right? They want to do a liver detox, and they'll say, "But I just can't give up my wine. I just have to have my wine." And I think, like, wait, you want to detox your liver, but you can't give up your wine. Well,
right.
Instead of saying I can't, I feel like people should say I won't. It really lets you off the hook a lot easier, because when you say you can't, that's a silly, silly statement.
Yeah.
Because you can do anything.
Totally.
You can try.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I think that's also, you probably get verbal cues from people.
100%. Yes.
Yeah?
So I studied neurolinguistic programming, and it's so funny because I was like, thinking it was going to be really difficult to understand what
neurolinguistic programming. Yeah. Can you explain what that is?
So neurolinguistic programming, essentially, like in a nutshell, it basically is the science behind how the words that we use affect our beliefs and our realities. And you just totally pointed it out with that difference between can't and won't. When we shift those small words like that, we're changing the way our brain is processing information.
So you're reminding me of the book, The Biology of Belief.
Yeah, totally, by Bruce Lipton.
Oh my gosh, right?
Yes.
And this is also neurolinguistic programming. Joe Dispenza talks about it. He does huge events about it.
Yeah.
And so we're lucky we have someone like you here in this community of Colorado Springs, where you can actually start coaching people on that specific. I think so many people don't realize the words that come out of their mouth.
No.
And we're lucky when we're around friends that hold up that mirror, like Sarah did for me earlier. Like, really, is this really what you just said about yourself?
Right.
And the impossibilities that we create for ourselves.
Yeah.
I'm writing a book called Unstuck Yourself.
I love that.
I want a t-shirt, you are so stuck. People are really stuck.
They
don't know that they're stuck.
They don't know that they're stuck. And I think that comes down to, like, we don't have a handbook for life, right? And the majority of us well, all of us have had whatever traumatic childhoods, but our parents all did the best they could. But nobody teaches us how to deal with our emotions. We're just barely coming to this connection of, oh, your emotions literally do affect the way your cells and your DNA expresses itself.
You're 100% right.
It does. But people don't know they're stuck because we're what do I say? Creatures of habit, right? We are creatures of habit. And as humans, we get stuck in patterns naturally. And routines are great, but it's easier to be stuck in something that's maybe not good for us because it's comfortable and because it's known. And we don't know what we don't know. So sometimes we're not even aware that we're stuck because we're just doing the same thing and we think that that's the way it is. But on the other side of that is the unknown, and the unknown is what is terrifying to all of us. But ultimately, it's that unknown where we grow.
It's the greatest gift, truly. I feel like it's the greatest gift. And, you know, the exploration that my company is diving into with transformative travel and doing these transformational retreats all over the world, there's a level of vulnerability.
Yeah.
And when we go into different cultures, the vulnerability that we feel is actually beautiful. And it makes us softer as people. We have to see with our own eyes to really integrate so much, I feel.
Yeah.
And getting out there. And I think that's part of the reason why, you know, we choose to live here in Colorado, where there's phenomenal mountains around us, and, you know, we give up a lot of city culture and things like that because we can tap into that feeling of humbleness and humility every time we look at the 14,000 foot peak
right there
that's all around us, right?
Yes.
It's a very spiritual thing.
It is.
I want to touch upon the somatic harmonizing. Could you expound about that? I want you to go over gene keys and somatic harmonizing, because these are two terms I've heard, but I know absolutely nothing about. I don't know if people listening have heard about this, but I'm really excited.
So somatic harmonizing, it's funny, it's kind of like a term that I came up with, honestly, because there's so many different things with somatics out there these days, which is great because people are finally opening up to this fact that our body is full of wisdom. And that's ultimately what the core of any somatic work is. Somatic just means body, soma, body. Processing, right? Somatic processing, we're processing with our body. So any type of somatic work is ultimately about developing and nurturing a relationship with our bodies and learning to understand the language of the body, which is sensations and feelings, and emotions come into that too. And so I got trained under another chiropractor, actually, with this thing called somatic respiratory integration, or SRI, and it was created by Dr. Donnie Epstein, who is a phenomenal chiropractor that created this type of chiropractic called network chiropractic. But anyway, somatic respiratory integration is basically this process where there's 12 different stages of different breath patterns, and then there's like verbal cues that go with it, vagal nerve stimulation with our hands.
So in a process where you're doing this type of breath work, I'm familiar with the Wim Hof method.
Yeah.
Are you doing cycles? Like, are you doing all 12 in one practice, or are you teaching separate practices?
So you want to have a foundation. And so, like I said, that SRI is kind of where my foundation for somatic harmonizing came. And I'm in the process of getting that term service marked or trademarked.
Right on.
So for me, what it is I kind of take this foundation and this understanding of the nervous system and what we're doing, and then I apply it to every situation a little bit differently. So it's essentially just getting the client to tune in and develop that relationship. There is a cycle and there's a process that we start with that's very foundational. But then with somatic harmonizing, I also will process specific emotions. So we might touch on specific things that they're dealing with or stories that they have in their brain, but then we'll process it through the body itself. So I'll get them out of their brain and say, you know, like, I believe I'm not good enough, or whatever it might be. And instead of just going into what that story is, we'll break down the sensations. And in a somatic harmonizing session, we're using breath, We're also using sound frequency. Sometimes I'll use tuning forks. Sometimes I'll use crystal singing bowls or Tibetan singing bowls or chimes, whatever. So that at that like frequency vibrational level, we're actually changing the information in the cell.
And do you do this in a group setting?
I have done it in group settings, yes, and I do offer it in group settings. And that's usually just a very foundational one. You know, we can't touch on specific things for people, but there are specific cycles that we'll go through, and I just kind of coach people through how to listen to their body and determine their best recipe for tapping into their body, because we're all unique individuals, and what works for someone might not work for someone else.
I do love this method, and I'm a huge fan of breath work. We have breath work on all our retreats. It's like a daily practice.
It's so magical.
One of the things I really love about breath work, first of all, it's the very first thing that brings you into this world, and it's the very last thing you will do. And with the new, I'm going to call it a fad. You could be upset that I just used this word fad with the hallucinogenics and ceremonies of plant medicine. It's not sustainable, friends. You can't take it with you. Or I'm not saying it's not a good thing to try. You know, go for it, have a good time, you have your experience. But when you're carpooling your kids and you're stressed out and you have anxiety, and things just feel like too much, that is not a tool you can use. The tool you can use are things like what Connie's teaching. You can tap into breath work anytime, anywhere, any place.
Yes.
You can have a baby in your arms.
Yep.
You could be walking down an aisle getting married. You could be in a courtroom. You could be at a stoplight. You could be in a Starbucks line. Like, I use my breath work all the time. I actually was so terrified of flying, and I own an international retreat company, but I was in a really bad plane, and it really shook me up. My kids are all over the country, so it was like, if I can't fly, I can't see them. So I tried driving here to New York to LA. It's like, this isn't working either, right? So the thing that helped me get through it was meditation and breath work. And still today, when I'm on a plane and there is turbulence, because turbulence happens, I go right into a certain mudra that I've kept in meditation that sinks me into that pattern. Now, you may tell me that's a nerve receptor thing.
Oh, totally.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm thinking it might be, because as soon as my body's like, okay, boom, yeah, here we are. Because when you're like that, you feel like this. And I'll start with my cycles of breath, not the heavy cycle, but the more slower cycles of breath.
Yep.
Trying to tap into the parasympathetic.
Yes.
And just tapping into like, okay, loosen your jaw, loosen your shoulder. And at the same time, the plane's doing this, and I'm just breathe. Focus on nothing but your breath.
That's it.
Don't think about anything else. And it took courage to do that, because my doctor said, no, when you get on the plane, take this pill. It'll last you 4 hours, so by the time you land, you're gonna be fine.
Right.
And there's been times where I'm like, maybe I should take the pill. And then the other part of my brain goes, maybe you shouldn't.
Right?
Maybe you can feel that feeling that anti-anxiety medication is gonna give you through your breath.
Yes.
And what I realized with breath work, you can get really high.
Yeah.
You don't need a drink, you don't need to smoke, you don't need to do anything,
Nothing.
just breathe. And people are like, what?
Yeah.
Seriously,
No.
it's really an absolutely fabulous
It is.
chemical inducer in the body.
Yeah, it changes everything in your body, and it happens like almost instantaneously. And that is something that I think so many of us were never taught. We don't even recognize, like, we're not even aware that we're breathing, because our body just does it for us. But it's such a magnificent and powerful tool that we can utilize and hone into and tap into. And like you said, in any moment, you can integrate it into your daily life, and you can completely shift how you're feeling, what your body is doing. You shift even the environment that your cells are in. I mean, I can get all super sciencey and go
No,
quantum
but I
physics
do like
with
the
it,
science, and I
it's-
appreciate the science.
Yeah. I mean, it literally is changing the information that our cells are getting, which then can change the way that the DNA expresses itself, which leads me perfectly into what the gene keys are. And the gene keys they're based out of human design. They're created by this man named Richard Rudd, who's still alive today and still teaches the gene keys, and he's a wonderful mystic poet. He is just so well spoken. His writing is amazing. But essentially what the gene keys is, and how I explain it, is it is a tool to get to know yourself on a deeper level through archetypes that show themselves throughout all of humanity, through stories and through just deep introspection. It's a tool that you can use to learn where your shadows lie, how you can get the gifts out of those shadows, and ultimately what your core essence is. And so much like human design, you put in the date, place of birth, birth date, birth time, all that stuff, and it generates a profile for you, and you can do that for free at thegenekeys.com. And then you'll get these little spheres, and they'll tell you the numbers. And so there's 64 gene keys. There's also 64 codons in our DNA. The gene keys is also based on the ancient divination tool known as the I Ching. And that is the same kind of mathematical thing with these trigrams and hexagrams, and it's these 64 different building blocks essentially. And when we look at life and we look at, plants and cell division and all this kind of stuff, it all comes back to the same matrix design of 64.
So this is really interesting, because I actually love the connections of any kind of metaphysical with scientific, because
Me too.
I'm more sciencey.
Me too.
And when you can show me in science where this connects, I really can integrate it better.
Yeah. Same.
And my question is, when you have this information, what do you do with it?
So one of the things that Richard Rudd talks about, he's the founder of Gene Keys, and it's something that I've done my whole life anyways that I didn't have a name for it, is the art of contemplation. Which contemplation is kind of...
It's beautiful.
It's like the middle way between meditating and between doing, right? So these are all these old mystical ways to call it enlightenment or whatever you want, Yogis or Buddhas rather, monks, would go lock themselves in a cave or whatever and meditate to get to enlightenment. Yogis would get into these positions naturally, and same thing, kind of like do these physical activities, go on these extreme fasts, whatever, this like very active doing to get to enlightenment, where contemplation is kind of the middle way between those two things. And the reality is, the world that we're in right now, I'm sorry, it's not standard for anyone to just go lock themselves in a cave and be okay. Like, we have very busy lives, and it's just going to keep getting busier, right? And so I think that this day and age, this time, demands us to be integrative, to integrate those things. Like, we're not trying to get to the top of the mountain and seek this enlightenment, but rather bring that wisdom of that enlightenment down into the present moment. And so when you're working with the system like the Gene Keys, it gives you a starting place to think about things, right? It's a framework that you can contemplate. And it's beautiful how it works, because you get your profile. Each gene key is also connected to a specific amino acid. And there's so many different connections with it. But anyways, each gene key is broken down into what's called a frequency band. So there's a shadow, a gift, and then the siddhi, which is a Sanskrit word that essentially translates to divine gift or divine essence. And so you read these descriptions of these gene keys, these archetypes, and you can see how the shadow operates in your life as an individual person, in society, in groups, and then you see the gift that comes from that shadow. And then the siddhi is kind of this natural core essence. And so, like, to give you an example, my purpose sphere in the gene keys is gene key number 3. And the shadow of that is chaos. The gift of that is innovation. And then the siddhi is innocence. And so for me, I have always had a super chaotic life. And I have also been the one to cause the chaos. But the beautiful thing that comes from that chaos is that it allows me to do a lot of different things at the same time, and then I can innovate and create new things.
Exactly. I really, like, as you were saying it, I was drawing the parallels, because we need people, we need leaders that out of chaos becomes innovation, because there's problems to solve.
Yeah.
When things are chaotic, as they are right now in this country,
Yeah.
when things are chaotic, you can't flow with chaos. It doesn't lead to anything. It's like being on a polluted river.
Mm-hmm.
From chaos needs order. There needs to be order.
Mm-hmm.
And the order is in people that are innovators are going to help create order, because there's no balance otherwise.
Totally.
So I love this. I love this idea. And, you know, I was saying you could take every negative feeling almost and turn it into a positive. Let's talk about anger.
Oh, yeah.
So when I think about, well, what was done absolutely amazing because of anger? Well, when there wasn't a fire department and houses were burning down and the first fire department was set up, when Benjamin Franklin decided that people deserved to be literate and opened up the first library because he was angry at the illiteracy.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things that happen in a positive way from people that are innovators.
Yes.
From the chaos. So
Totally.
I do like this. So what I'm feeling is I'm going like this, like, gosh, we need to do some events together. I could see, you know, week-long immersive retreats just on the many skills that you have. And I think it's great when people do immersive, intensive trainings.
Yeah.
So that they have the tools to start to advance forward. And these things that you are teaching are become lifestyle, really.
Yeah.
You know, it's a daily practice, and lifestyle changes. And when she was talking about cells and effectiveness of cells, I kept thinking about, you know, all the reasons I eat the way I do and write my nutrition the way I do is because I'm looking at the energy of the sun. I'm thinking about photosynthesis and cellular energy, where people in my field are so focused on macros and micros. I'm focused on, well, what is that doing for my cell? How much life exists in that thing that I'm putting into my body?
Yeah.
You know, what am I doing for myself? How would I feed that plant, or how would I grow that crop? And why would I treat myself differently? So everything you're saying is mind, body, spirit.
Yes.
Full circle.
Yeah.
So talk about real quick before we end, what events you have coming up, how people can find you, how they can work with you, and your website, and how to get in touch with you.
Yeah. So my website is super easy to remember. It's theroomtobloom.com. That's the name of my business.
Beautiful.
Room to Bloom. Because we're all ready to bloom, right?
Right.
So I'm here to help give you room for that. So that's my main website. You can find all my events and everything there. And then you can also find me on the Gene Keys website. I'm an official guide, so you can find all of my info there. You can work with me one-on-one. We can do Gene Keys sessions. We can just do empowerment coaching. We can do somatic harmonizing. I also host a lot of meditations and sound baths. So that's what I have coming up the rest of this month. I just did my nervous system reset meditation last night, which is a monthly meditation I hold at the Salt Vault Wellness Center. That's usually typically the last Wednesday of every month, but this one got postponed, so there's 2 in May. So there's another one at the end of this month.
Nice.
And that's a donation-based event. It's about an hour long, and I just kind of guide you through your breath into a state of heart coherence. I use some crystal bowls, and everybody always leaves feeling just completely relaxed, super renewed, super rejuvenated. Are you
going to be doing some workshops here at the Treehouse, potentially?
I am, yeah. So I actually am doing an introduction to what sound healing is on the, gosh, I need to look at my calendar. I'm so bad with dates. I think it's the 19th. Yep, the 19th I'll be here at 1 o'clock of May. It's a Sunday.
Okay.
So there's still spaces for that. You can sign up and I'll teach you all about sound healing, how it works, get into the nitty-gritty science, get into some of the history of it, the spiritual side of it. Nice. Give everybody a chance to like see these tools and touch these tools, because sometimes these things can be really expensive. And then I'll also teach you ways that you can integrate it into your own life. So that, you know, you can make it an everyday thing, because I'm really all about integration. So how can you make this part of your life?
Right.
So that's coming up this month. And then I also have another sound bath, like a full-length sound bath coming up at the Salt Vault Wellness Center. And I also do private and couples sound baths there in the salt cave, so you get the benefit of the sound bath.
Yeah, it's a beautiful salt cave she's got there.
It's so magical. And you get the halo therapy, which is just phenomenal for your body, for inflammation, for respiratory stuff, skin. There's just a ton of benefits. So that's what I've got going on. And then I am planning like a 4-hour-long workshop here soon. It should start coming out. I don't have a date yet set. But that's going to be like a whole kind of self-care day where I integrate a lot of this stuff.
That's great. I think you have a book in you. I hope you join us for the Storyteller Symposium on the 11th.
I would love to,
Because we'll have a phenomenal publisher there.
Yeah.
0 Point Academy, Authorship Academy, and everyone's got a story to tell, and so many of us want to hear it. Today, we are sponsored by Healing Wheel Holistic Retreats and Travel, Essential Wellness Society, and the Treehouse Cafe. I want to thank you, and thank you, Connie. Thank you for being our guest and sharing your brilliance, and we'll see you next time.